Jesus, I crave to know you, just to know you will satisfy my soul.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is episode number 164. I want to thank you for taking the time to join me on this episode. I want to say a special hello to those listening in Canada and the Czech Republic. I just want to specifically thank you all for taking the time each week to dial into these episodes. I pray that they are strengthening you, encouraging you, and I just appreciate that you take the time each week to find these, to invest your time into them. So we'll just jump right into our episode for today. I've titled this more or less, Jesus Wept. And this is really emphasizing something that, I've read this probably, I could comfortably say, if not hundreds of times, maybe more. But it's a thought that has never occurred to me before. And I was letting my Bible play to me on my way home from work. So I was listening to it in my commute. And it jumped out at me so strongly. And it was so subtle, such a small little portion that I noticed. So I want to just kind of elaborate on that some in this episode, and we're going to be in the book of John, chapter 11, verses 31 through 36. And it's regarding a scene that many of us may be familiar with in the story of Lazarus. So we'll start reading in verse 31, and it says, "When the Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Now when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying to him, 'Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.' When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, 'Where have you laid him?' They said to him, 'Lord, come and see.' Jesus wept. So the Jews said, 'See how he loved him.'" Now that just stopped me in my tracks. When you hear me unpack this, you will likely or may say, yes, I've had that thought before. But from this perspective, I think I've never heard this, I've never read it, and it's something that I've never noticed. I'm so thankful for how God does that in when we get to explore the Bible, and sometimes we can find these things, through effort as we dig and dissect and think and meditate. And sometimes these things just come out and hit us, square in the face. And so I'm thankful for how all of that happens. But it's the phrase, "See how he, Jesus, loved him, Lazarus." That's the impression that the Jews who accompanied Mary, that's the impression that they had. So notice that conclusion. When they observed how Jesus was greatly troubled and moved in his spirit and began to weep, their conclusion of that moment is that Jesus greatly loved Lazarus. But if you will notice the moment before, which you may have concluded this already, the moment before Jesus wept, it says that Jesus saw Mary weeping and the Jews who had come with her also weeping. So when Jesus saw Mary and her, we'll call them companions, weeping, quote, he was greatly troubled and deeply moved in his spirit. It does not say that when Jesus realized that Lazarus was dead and in his tomb and was invited to the graveside that he was deeply moved. No, Jesus wept because of the broken hearts around him. Now, many of us, like Mary's companions, conclude that Jesus must be moved by the situation that has us troubled, when in fact, he is moved and troubled because our hearts are broken or troubled. Similarly, we also can find it hard to believe that Jesus could be brokenhearted because of the pain that we are feeling. He must be more concerned for this or that person, but not me, we may think. We, like Mary's companions, can more easily believe that Jesus may care deeply over this or that person, but do we ever get the realization that it is actually us, personally, that Jesus is actually deeply moved for? So many times in our thinking, we get caught in that hamster wheel of thinking, and it must be someone else, but surely not me. Do we have the eyes to see that Jesus actually weeps over us? Now consider this. Jesus was aware of the situation regarding Lazarus' death long before he made it to where they lived. Jesus knew ahead of time what would happen, and this did not take Jesus by surprise. In fact, why would Jesus weep knowing that in just a short moment he was going to bring him back to life? If we think about it closely, Jesus would not be weeping over the fact that Lazarus is dead and in his tomb. Jesus would be weeping because in that moment he sees the hearts of those around him broken, and he was deeply moved within his heart for those who were experiencing that hurt and despair. But notice what those around Mary and them said. See how he loved him. Do you see how they misread the situation? Sometimes it feels as though God may be a million miles away, disconnected from the very troubles, hurts, pains that we are experiencing. Perhaps in the midst of loss, of injustice, or devastation that we may experience, it is easy to think that God is just up somewhere high in the clouds behind the sunshine and rainbows, and we are stuck here to carry this burden of our emotions by ourselves. But let us not forget, Jesus felt the breaking heart and crushing of the soul with those that remained mourning the loss of Lazarus. Now, this encourages me to consider that Jesus is intimately connected to the reality of the moment of your heartbreak, of your pain, of your joy, or even your anger. Jesus is not only aware of your pain, but he also participates in your mourning. So instead of Mary's companions seeing Jesus weeping and saying, "See how he loved Lazarus," perhaps they should have said, "See how he loves us." Do you see how that is dramatically and markedly different? See how he loves us. See how he is moved right now because he is moved by what is moving us. He is moved because you are moved. So I pray that each one of us understand that Jesus' heart is deeply moved for you personally. And also that may we have a heart that can participate in the feelings of others. Not just feel sorry for people, but to also feel what they feel. That's a dangerous request, isn't it? But how much more impact could we have if we felt what people feel? See, Jesus wept because his heart broke for those experiencing this pain in the moment. May we be like Jesus.
If it means that I'm close to you, I would trade 1,000,000 lifetimes for a moment here with you. And in your house, I would open the door. If it means that I'm close.